I'm Rik Offenberger, and they've asked us to do this WonderCon at Home panel. So we're taking our How to Get News Coverage panel to everyone's home, thanks to the wonderful people at WonderCon. And we're very excited to be here with you, and I'd like to have everyone here introduce themselves so you know who's here with us. Heidi, would you like to start?
Sure. Hi, I'm Heidi McDonald. I'm the editor-in-chief of The Beat at comicsbeat.com. I've also worked for DC Comics. I've worked for Disney. I've worked with conventions. I helped launch New York Comic Con. I've written books. So, you know, I've sort of seen it all on both sides.
Thank you. Jason?
Hey, my name is Jason LiVecchi. I've worked at a couple of different stations in my 10-year career in TV news. I started out at a small station in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and then I worked for NBC News in San Diego for 4 years, and I worked for the CW for 3 years, and now I work for a station at KUSI. I've had a variety of roles. My main role now, actually my only role now, is a photographer and editor, but I was also kind of an evening news manager who their job was to gather news and kind of field phone calls from the public. So I was an assignment editor in layman's term, but it is what people know. And I gather news and I organize it and I help people get their stories out. So.
Cool. Josh?
Hello, my name is Joshua Waldrop. I've spent the last 20 years or so in various marketing and PR facets in the worlds of comics, pro wrestling mainly, and independent music. Currently, I'm getting a comic publishing boutique off the ground called Red Gorilla Comics, and happy always to do the panel here with Rik and all y'all.
Thank you. Tim?
It's me, it's him, it's T-I-M. Hey, everybody. Best-selling writer, producer, award-winning speaker. My piece I co-wrote with Clive Barker was published in the Bram Stoker-winning It's Alive. My newest film that I'm producing, The Year of Laughing Dangerously, which has a little guy named Rik Offenberger in it. Stars Rob Van Dam, Mindy Robinson, Patrick Kilpatrick. I've done everything from Fangoria to Chicken Soup for the Soul.
Thank you, Tim. And Jez?
Hi, I'm Jez Ibelle. Of course, I don't have my WonderCon thing. I write for firstcomicsnews.com, and I essentially am I'm very good at networking, I guess I should say that. I've done quite a bit of different things, and I essentially lived a con, so.
All right. Francis?
Oh, hi. Francis Guy here. I am a reporter for First Comics News. Kind of dabbled a little bit, kind of like Josh has dabbled a little bit of things. I've booked concerts in the past. I've trying to work on a comic with Josh actually, and it's kind of going along, as we could say. It's almost getting like Brian's novel at this point from Family Guy, but we're working on it.
Cool. Well, what we do here is try and help independent publishers and small press people figure out how to get press coverage for their comics. I was the public relations manager for Archie Comics, and we were starting off early with the internet and trying to get more and more awareness for our product when I started with the company. And as I go through the different conventions, I find a lot of small press people don't even know really what to do to get people to notice their product. They don't actually understand who their customer is. They don't know what to do. One of the things I like to comment on is my son found a comic called Anne Frankenstein, and you get the joke immediately. And he liked it. And the next year he went back and he got the second issue. And I talked to the guy who did it, and I thought, I've got in First Comics News, we could do a little press release on this and put out a little information. He didn't have a website. He didn't have a way for anyone to purchase the comic from him if they weren't standing in front of him at the convention. And it really pointed out that you really have to know how to get your product to someone. I mean, it's fine to love the product and want to get it out there and get an audience, but if people want it and can't get it, it doesn't do you any good. And so we all have a variety of different skills here to try and help you get your product out there and try and help you get coverage and what to do and also what not to do. You got anything to add, Francis, there?
I don't want to me. I was like, no, I agree. You have to get your word out. I mean, you can be the best comic in the world, best comic artist in the world, best writer, best whatever. But if you have nothing to promote it with, no one's going to see it. Also, for me, I've always noticed when I was doing, I always put the story up, but when I was doing concerts, I have people come up and go, here's my CD. I'm like, cool. Okay. What do you want me to do with it? And it's like, just give me like a CD blank, nothing. And when you are presenting yourself to a promoter or a manager or whatever you want to call it, you have to put the best quality forward and be ready to be like, all right, this is what it is. This is what my band is, the mix of this, or this is what my comic is. It's this, this, this. Like, it needs to be ready and not just go, here's a comic. Like, oh, thanks. Oh, that's good.
Or even, hey, I'm curious, I'm partially working on a comic. Can you write me something on a complete, like a concept that I have? I'm like, you don't even remotely have anything. You have a concept. Like you have no idea what you're doing, and you're wanting someone to push a product for you, and you have like you can't even give them anything.
Yeah, a lot of people want to promote an idea, and everybody's got ideas, but very few people who have ideas actually follow through to the finished product. So, like, how many people that are on this panel have either supported a Kickstarter or gotten a press release for something, or had somebody come up to them and want them to promote something, and then it's never finished. They never hear about it again. It's like, you can't promote an idea. You have to actually follow through, do the work, have some level of quality to your work, and then the real work begins to start getting that word out and networking, and you have to put that other hat on.
I think one of the problems is a lot of times people feel like sales is opposite of being an artist. Like, it's below them to have to sell. They immediately think I'm becoming some kind of sleazy car salesman if I'm trying to pitch my wares. But the problem is, and I know this from being in the book publishing industry, it doesn't say, and I'm not the first one to say this, Robert Kiyosaki said this, on a successful novel, it doesn't say best written book. It says best selling book. So you can write the best book in the world, but if nobody buys it, you're not going to get anywhere. So you have to get over that hump and see it's just part of the process. It's not dirty in any way. You gotta pay your rent.
Yeah, I think it's important to say that. I think it's important also, though, that when you're at a certain point with what your product is, that realize whether you're good at it or not. If you're a really, really bad salesman, then you might look at getting somebody in to help you. There's lots of great people out there who are really good at selling, like the people on the panel. And it's an added expense, so that money isn't encouraging you to learn how to market by coming to things like this and getting some tips and so on and so forth. But there's a lot of different methods. I think even now, like, we've seen human beings adapt very quickly to this Zoom environment, the online meeting. And, the first time I did one of these, I was really embarrassed. And now I'm like, whatever, it's 2:00. So, people are adapting very quickly to find these new methods. And, you should be aware of the ones that work for you do.
I also feel like people get intimidated by the idea of, how do I do all this stuff? Like writing a press release, something as simple as writing a press release to send out to the industry websites. People are like, well, I don't know how to write a press release. And one of the things that creatives who have a product should consider is using their creativity, not just to tell the story that they want to tell or create the thing they want to create, but how to dig in and do a little bit of research. You can Google everything now. You can Google how to write a press release, and it'll walk you through the formula, how to write a press release. You can literally learn everything you need to learn about how to promote something, how to create a cover sheet, any kind of anything online with YouTube and Google. So, and embrace the added creative benefit of being able to now figure out how to promote the thing that you just made.
I definitely like Tim's point. I think it was Tim that said it, that people think that their selling is beneath them. And if anybody was thinking that out there, I want to let them know, like, if you knew how many press releases our assignment desk gets an hour, you'd be blown away by the same people. Like, for instance, any city politician, any elected official, or any like theme park, the zoo, even Comic-Con and Comic-Con Museum, they're constantly sending press releases all the time. They're constantly pitching their ideas. So it's not below, the mayor of San Diego, and it's not below you. It's like you're pitching your idea, and just be like, don't be afraid to send multiple ones over and over again. Just, be annoying. There's someone here working to get those. Not annoying.
Don't send a message to my personal Facebook without any unsolicited and basically say, here's my thing, will you please share it? Like, there's a way to speak to someone and getting them to support your idea without shoving it down their throat.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Another thing too is don't take it personal if they don't answer immediately. That's going to really turn somebody off. They're going to be like, well, why aren't you answering my stuff? Why aren't you answering? Again, someone previously said was, we get someone like working in a newsroom, you'll get hundreds of press releases an hour. I mean, I still get constantly from emails about music or about comic related or movie related, and it's over and over and over per hour. It's like, yeah, there's a lot to go through, and we're gonna have, there are people that have to go through and sort that kind of thing. It's not gonna be like an immediate thing, and that's one thing too. You got to learn. Nothing really happens overnight. There's maybe a 1 out of a billion chance of that happening, but there is a way. You got to make those press releases do pop out though to something. Maybe do some little research if you want a specific person to cover it. Like, oh, they cover, let's say me. I do a lot of. If you look on the site right now, a lot of Overwatch stuff. I'll admit it. I play that game a lot. I'm addicted. I watch the league, but someone goes, hey, this is, if you like Overwatch, check out this, or like hero shooter game, something like that. Like,
I play Overweight Watch. It's a little bit slower.
I got that too going right now.
I have a story about that's it. That you say don't take it personally, because I got like a DM on my Twitter from a fairly big name in the industry, a very well-known name in the industry, and they were concerned because I had their press release, and they were wondering if I was mad at them, and I was like, no, I just never got it. Send it to me and I'll run it. I never got that press release. So, everyone, I think probably they just have my wrong email and didn't know it. I'm going to absolutely reach out and try to collect that. But, I mean, it's there's these, baby steps and, like mailing list, how are you getting your mailing list? Have a sign up sheet at your table, or, have a space on your website, or, to sign up for things and collect those names, collect that information.
Well,
Yeah, having the direct. I'm sorry, Josh. Go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, having that direct connection to your fan base without any middleman is huge. When I was a stand-up comic, one of the final shows I did at the Ontario Improv before I got out, there was a headliner that weekend who was collecting the emails of his fans who were coming to the shows, and I made fun of him. I was telling the other guys, this is so stupid. The clubs book us anyway. Why do you need to know them individually? You know who that guy was? Kevin Hart. So maybe he knew what he was doing.
Push it. Yeah, push it. Exactly.
Yeah, I was just going to say to Jezebel's point too, cold calling and just trying to ramrod your project into somebody's face or into their attention usually won't get you as far as if you nurture a relationship. Like, you want to have these relationships going forward anyway. It's much more likely that you're going to have a friend or somebody be excited to promote your project than a stranger that you just go, here, can you promote this out? Can you tweet this out? Versus interacting with somebody online, whether your platform is Twitter, Instagram, whatever, commenting, helping share their stuff, and being interested in what they're doing, and then nurturing that relationship to where when you do send them the press release, you do send them your project, not only do they know who you are already, so you'll stand out amongst all the rest of the effluvia of, like Francis said, all of the press releases coming in, but also they'll be excited to share it for you because they want to help see you succeed.
Absolutely.
further that note, like, okay, so I talk about this pretty regularly, but I wanted to kind of show this is what people see when they go to cons. You are in the middle of all of these other business cards. As a press person, I get tons, and if I don't know who you are or had some typing, I actually watched a TED Talk, and most people within 30 seconds of meeting you, they're going to know whether or not they want to assist you. So, you know, if you don't make any type of personal connection, and I know there's a little difference between in person and you know, sending a press kit electronically, but you know, people will kind of like your personality and how you express yourself is going to make a huge deal on whether or not somebody from the press is going to want to write something about you.
And by the way, it doesn't mean be fake about it. It doesn't mean act like you're somebody and what they're doing just so they will cover you. Like, be genuinely interested in what they're interested in and what they're tweeting about and what they're posting about in their projects if they're also a creator. And genuinely want to forge that relationship, because I mean, most people at this point can smell inauthenticity a mile away.
Yeah, I would back up that 30-second rule also. I mean, it really is true. It might even be 10, 15 seconds. But, you know, you approach someone, you know, like Jez Ibelle, I'm sure all of us here, we've seen not even hundreds. We've probably seen thousands of projects pitched at us, you know.
All right. Glenn has joined us now too. Glenn, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. I'm Glenn Hauman. I'm calling in from ComicMix, from wherever they're holding WonderCon this year. I guess they found this little hotel that seems to work fine. I am the head chief of Chief Bottle Washer, the big guy, I think is what the current business cards read, at ComicMix.com, where we're currently involved in doing book packaging, book printing, and like everybody else, trying to survive and try to get a bigger story than what's going on in the outside world.
Well, we're here to help people who are doing their own self-publishing comics and small press publishers. What can you tell us about ComicMix's relationship with Indiegogo and crowdfunding and how all that works?
Our relationship with I mean, we've been doing this for a while, so we've gotten relationships with both Indiegogo and Kickstarter, and for a while we'd even consider, while Kickstarter had been doing while they were in the process of getting their union together, we had even put together our own backup crowdfunding system in case Kickstarter's ownership didn't prepare for it, because we were just, you know. Crowdfunding is a weird thing, mainly because the main thing you have to do more than anything else is cultivate a base, cultivate a fan base, and cultivate a
crowd.
Yes, a crowd, yeah. But it's basically being able to sit down and go to people and ask for money in advance. Anybody who's actually done comics for any extended period of time is kind of familiar with this, just because they're used to getting pre-orders in. This is more of a way, however, of getting pre-orders from people who aren't in your existing business. Working with, and instead of Diamond being your partner, if you do it properly, Kickstarter is your partner and Indiegogo is your partner. So you get out there, you go, you come up with the same sort of idea that you would be doing if you were launching a new series or a new book, and you just have to be able to pre-sell it to your backers. And then hopefully, as you build the process, while you're funding your numbers, you have enough not only to pay the people who are initially backing you with rewards or the actual book themselves, but also that you have enough to be able to sit down and go, hey, we're going to sit down, you know, that we have enough to then launch it into Diamond or into bookstores or into other things like that. Now, of course, that was back in the plan when you could still, you know, distribute books through Diamond, but the idea is not, you know, dissimilar here.
Yeah, now you can distribute them through Comicology.
Yeah, and actually there's another thing that's being worked on, you know, with other distributors, which oddly I'm not going to discuss in the panel about how to get news coverage, because the news isn't ready to be disseminated yet, which is a very different sort of point, insofar as you're only going to get one real shot to try and break through So make sure that you are ready to pick your shot and have as many pieces as you have in place beforehand to do that material. I understand the logic to a certain extent if it's an emergency of get something out there now and then be prepared to deal with feedback later and to try and make that shot perfect. But the old story about getting a chance to make a first impression is really very true. And particularly with crowdfunding, with people that you've been dealing with for a long time, you may have already made that good first impression, but you still want to keep that relationship going.
How often should you update the people who back you? I mean, should you send out a daily update? Should you send it out weekly?
I usually keep it down to about once a month. It depends on where you are in the campaign. If you've got a campaign that's running right now, you can do it. You could do it daily, but only if you really have something new and worthwhile and just aren't clogging up people's mailboxes. The cardinal sin in any sort of news coverage, of trying to get news, is wasting the other person's time. That's always the cardinal sin of sitting down and going, how do you sit, why are you reading this email with just the idea of just getting more money out of me? It's just not worth it. We will send, for our most famous crowdfunding piece, I mean, it's a special case. We'll only send out notices when, basically when court dates change. When people start talking about, oh, look, the book is invisible, the wonderful green screen here, it's amazing. But, it's also nice if you have a court date that you can hook into. For example, they moved our court date. Our original court date for our latest crowdfunding appeal was April Fool's Day, which seemed appropriate. But that was a court date in Seattle, so for some reason that just didn't seem to work as well as you might think it might, and then it got moved past and so on and so forth. That would be the bit for. Let me take away this background here. That's the crowdfunding thing for this book, and there's an appeal hearing that will. And part of it is also, in this case, we're waiting until we can actually hear whether or not people can dial into the court date. It's one thing to say, yeah, we've got this wonderful court date going, but it's even better if you can say, yeah, come on by and take a look and dial in, which we're going to find out probably in about a week or so.
All right, well, good luck.
We kind of touch base on about actually having your shit together before you start just throwing out ideas.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, Heidi will understand, even as somebody who puts together a news site, even though there's a great temptation to go and fill up the news site day after day after day with silly press releases or anything else, you also you've got a relationship with your readers. You don't want to waste time with that.
I think
You
Francis.
also can burn yourself out trying to come up with new content if you're doing every single day, especially if you're not used to it.
Hey, Glenn, here's a question for you.
Yeah. For prime example, go look at every other late night talk show, which now amazingly looks just like what we have here. It's like watching set. It's amazing. Yes, Jimmy Fallon and I have the same set designer now. It's great. But on the other hand, the flip side of that bit is you also want to have that level of authenticity. I was being cute having the Simpsons background behind me just a few minutes ago, and that was cute for a few minutes. But it's also Gesundheit. You want to have that moment of authenticity, and sincerity with your audience, or with your news editor, or whoever it is that you're trying to speak to. Once you can fake that, of course, you have it made. But the idea is to try and at least be, it's always a tough level of, you don't necessarily have to be super polished in what you're doing. It's the YouTube channel argument. You don't have to be hyper polished. You don't have to be, you just have to be better than 99% of the people out there. which is
zombie theorem, right? You don't have to run the fastest. You just have to run that.
Yeah, you just have to outrun the guy next to you. Exactly. Yeah, sure.
Heidi, what type of how-to information do you have on the beat for people who are looking to get some coverage?
Well, we don't really have an email that says email us, and believe me, they find it, but as soon as I have a lot of time, so as soon as I'm off this call, but we don't don't cover everything, obviously. I mean, I tried to have a crowdfunding roundup. I feel like that's really the best way to do it, and normally we've quite a few columnists who are like our crowdfunding experts. And, you know, ironically, one of them started out was Henry Rajas, who I met really, you know, Henry is the role model for how to do all of this because, you know, we met on Twitter and then we met at a con and then we became friends. And then he was writing, you know, one of my writers, and then he was a crowdfunding column. And he did his own crowdfunding, and now, you know, and now was what around to places. He was getting flown around to talk about his book. So, but then we had another columnist, and he left. You know, people, it tends to kind of roll over, but you know, we give a lot of attention to crowdfunding. But I was going to ask throughout the panel. I mean, I think crowdfunding is pretty viable right now. I mean, because we can't go to conventions, you know, and we probably won't. Let's be real. We're probably not going to be able to go to conventions until 2021. So that's pretty, if then. So it's pretty much off for the rest of the year, having, you know, massive in person. So what do you think everyone should have? What is everybody thinks should be the minimum that people should have right now, you know, as far as PR goes? What are the must-dos?
Social media, sure.
Yes, social media.
Social media is probably the most important thing, not just in promoting a project, but in all of sales right now. I spent the last couple of years working for a digital content company that was contracted to work with all different sorts of companies specifically to create social media content because it's such a driving force in the marketplace right now. And as whatever your industry is gets more and more niche, you know, you're not just sales for the sake of sales, but you're selling to people like a comic book to people who are into comic books. The social media and the networking and the community building is almost imperative. Like, I don't even see how you could successfully really push a project without it.
I think that the thing is you really have to know who your audience is, and a lot of people don't. They're really excited about being creators, and they're really excited about putting things out. But if you were going to publish this through Diamond, which isn't a possibility at the moment, but if you were going to publish physical books, your customer is not the customer who buys the book. I mean, you want to get it in their hands, but your customer is the comic book retailer. And so you really have to get your marketing set up so that they buy your book. Because if every fan in the world wants it, but no retailer takes it, you're nowhere. And now you're really going to be doing like one-on-ones, you know, if you're trying to get your independent book out. If you've got a stack of them sitting in your basement or your garage and you want to get them out, you're going to have to mail these things yourself. And so,
or you're going to have to work up something with a printer or something else like that. You're going to have to be, you know, but yeah, people are not going to easily deal with the excuse you have something better to do. You know, that you have to be able to go out and meet with these people, you know, and yeah, for example, if you're buying comics from somebody, you have a choice of people you can send, you know, you can have them drop ship to you, you know, as an example may be. So why are you picking your local comic book store over Midtown Comics, as an example? Why are you dealing with these people instead of the other, you know? And it really just goes back to a certain amount of, you know, customer service, hand-holding, or, you know, the ability to just sit down and talk with the person over a beer, as the case may be, or sit down and say, oh, you should really try this book because, you know, or if you're looking for something funny, I highly recommend Innsmouth, for example, you know, which, you know, it's real simple. You sit down and
ooh, that looks really good. I like that.
What?
I like that. I've never heard of that one.
This is wonderful. It basically takes place in Innsmouth. You know, it's think Call of Cthulhu meets Book of Mormon. Is the easiest way to describe it. You know, hi, I'm Randall. I'm from the esoteric corner of Innsmouth. Can I introduce you?
Is it ongoing or is it self-contained? Is that the whole story?
This is a nice, simple graphic novel that you can sit down. It's about 200 pages. We're trying to get Megan to do a second one. It's become incredibly just warped and popular enough, as you might see, to sit down and, you know, all of a sudden there were people who were interested in doing an adaptation. The same people who had done I shouldn't mention the TV show, but had done other comic adaptations for other TV networks were looking at this going, this would be great. And then, of course, you know.
Cool. Yeah. I love anything inspired by H.P. Lovecraft, but I don't actually like the writings of H.P. Lovecraft, which is hilarious, but I love anything inspired by it.
Like I said, this is you know, you've got a small town in Rhode Island of cultists who are really just bad at this. And and now the apocalypse is coming, and well, you know.
Anyway, do you see how cleverly Glenn worked his marketing campaign?
They
Right?
shameless
He's brilliant, brilliant. He's great. You know, I want to say one other thing though about necessities and what you were saying about social media, Josh, is 100% true. But you need to have, I really do believe you must have a static website of some kind that you have updated more recently than 2 years ago.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Especially now.
Who have a great message, and then I look at their bio and they don't have a link, and I'm like, okay, oh, all right, I'm gonna have to look. All right, fine. And then, you know, like they don't have a page that's been a website, or Tumblr, or an anything. They have nothing. You know? So I mean,
if you got a project, the minimum you've got to have is a website to support it, a link to how they can purchase it on your website, and a Facebook page to just have fans find you there, also with a link to how to purchase. I mean, your goal has to be to sell your project. I mean, it's great to put art out there in the world and feel good about it. But if you want to be the only one who knows about it, that's great. If you want everyone to know about it, you got to be able to get it to people. And the minimum is there's a link somewhere so someone can buy it if they're excited.
Mm-hmm. Take the
You
time.
know, there's one other thing is I was just going to say is, instead of trying to appeal to everybody, which is what some people do with their product, they always think, oh, this is great for everybody. These people would love it, and these people would love it, and these people would love it, and everybody would love it, and you would all love it. Here's why. If you focus on a specific niche audience, then you can go all in on those people to make the most money. When I moved to Hollywood, I sat down, I had a meeting with a rep from NBC, and he told me, because I was trying to be an actor comedian, and he goes, Tim, if you had to choose between art or money, what would you choose? And I said, I think you want me to say art, but I'd probably choose money. And he said, good, because with more money, you can always make more art. And I was just writing down some notes. There was a time where I tried to focus on everybody, thinking everybody should read my stuff. And I changed that philosophy in the last year and a half. And by focusing on individual clients or advertisers, I've easily made $200,000 more than I would have if I had focused on everybody.
You really have to super serve the super fan, and then word will bleed from there. Because people, they're genre-specific things. In our first panel, there was a guy in the audience, Josh Henneman, who does this panel with us a few times now, and he had his comic Sword of the Bigfoot. And he didn't market to everyone who loves comics. He marketed to Bigfoot fans. He's a cryptozoologist.
They're out there.
And he went and he put everything he could find everywhere on cryptozoology sites, but he didn't just plug his stuff. He responded to the other stuff because he liked it too, and he interacted, and he was part of the community.
He was authentic.
Yeah.
Also,
funny you mention authentic and stuff. If you if you've built a good relationship with your fan base, I'm just, as I reach over here, you can literally go 15 years between projects, and your fan base will come back to you.
True.
You know, this being the most egregious example of, okay, I'm doing other things in the meantime, but 15 years later, hey, I'm going back to this thing, and all of a sudden, like, wow, and you get your fan base back. Hell, you drag people back who hadn't been reading some comic books in a very long time, but it's like, oh, I've been waiting for this for whatever. So.
And that's why you see, to go back to Tim saying, getting fans in for certain things to go mainstream. You see that in movies. Like, you'll see a movie from the producers of Nightmare on Elm Street, from the producers of this and this and this, and it automatically turns on that light of somebody going, oh, I like Nightmare on Elm Street. I'll go see that movie. So usually when they say from the producer, it's usually not that good, but you get your money.
You at least get an idea of the sort of story that they're talking about, and they have some idea of who it is that they're trying to reach. I mean, at the very least, yes, they are trying to cash in on the existing, okay, I have fans in blah, 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 but at least you're trying to go, okay, maybe if you like this, you may like this other stuff. I mean, there wouldn't be a reason why you're hyping your writers and your artists and anything else like that if you assume that they didn't have a fan base of their own. Even if it's something different and completely unexpected, you sit down and go, hey, I've got this book that's coming out here, a new trade paperback with work by Peter David and Amanda Connor, for example, which is one that we just, and people go, oh my God, Amanda Connor art that I haven't seen before, even if the book is literally at this point 25 years old, you know, most people never saw it, so it's new to you. And it's like, oh wow, Amanda Conner art, great, and Peter David art, and it's funny and lighthearted. And it's like, yeah, but it's a horror book. No, really, it's funny and lighthearted.
Well, if you're Joe Schmo and no one knows who you are, you don't have the name cachet as Peter David, you really need to target websites, magazines, and things that cater specifically to what you are doing. I mean, if you're doing a zombie comic, try and cater to people who wrote positive things about zombies. If you're doing a superhero comic, target people who like superheroes, so that you're not, you know, spending all your time barking up the wrong tree. And
there's actually
also, be careful with what you send them. Don't send them, you know, a PDF of the entire book, you know, or encyclopedia. Send them just a little bit of art and start a conversation with them so that they are interested in what you're doing, and, you know, they'll ask for more if they want more. But don't fill up someone's entire mailbox with your one pitch. And also give them time to get back to you. And if they don't get back to you, assume they didn't see your email, and never be entitled and be pissed off that they didn't get back to you, because no one dislikes that more than having to deal with someone who's pissed off.
You've actually got one huge advantage right now, thanks to, you know, the year of the plague, that that most people watching this video have never had before, and it's a level playing field. Right now, for most of us, we're all figuring out from ground zero how the heck we do what we do from nothing. And some people are doing it very, you know, it's basically we're all starting from the same point nowadays. And you can see it to a certain extent where, you know, I'm going to use the example of late night talk shows. Everybody is now suddenly, you know, everybody has now suddenly had to regress to YouTube level, or, you know, basically shoot your regular show with whatever it is you have in your backyard.
Well, actually, you might be better off now than Marvel and DC, because they're not putting out any product at the moment. They keep talking about putting out something soon. But if you've got your product and you can get it out there, there's more chance than ever that people will pick up your stuff to cover it, because there's such a, I mean, Marvel used to send out multiple press releases a day. And so now you can get people's ear. And if you've got a PDF and you've got a PayPal account, you can have people come to your website, click, send you the money, and you can email them a copy of your PDF.
But there's a lot of people who are talking about Gumroad right now, which is a digital, I mean, I think these digital services that are set up to sell your digital products, I think we're going to see a lot of people moving to those. And, you know, you can set your own price, or
but more important, but at this point, assuming with the assumption that nobody's making any money off of this stuff, and for the most, and I understand that everybody right now needs a certain amount of cash to get in, but right now everybody needs cash to get in. You kind of want to go where they aren't, and what you're looking for right now is mind share. The fact that, you know, right now this is your chance to play catch up on Marvel. This is your chance to play catch up on DC. This is your chance to you know, use the soap opera argument of, you know, people have been waiting for their weekly fix of comics and they're not getting it anymore. So right now, go ahead, do a page a day, put it up there, and then see how people respond to it, and let the work, you know, and let it go forth from there, and take your time. You know, it's not. I know it's not like we have anything better to do, but, you know, enjoy building your audience again, because, you know, I know this sounds horrible, like, you know, but it's the monkey's paw thing. Everybody else has now suddenly disappeared. The field is clear. Now what are you going to do?
And I want to point out something about, like, getting specific, like getting press coverage, like when it comes to like local TV news. I wanted to make this point before we end this here, that you make it topical. You know, if you're going to make a pitch, like let's say you're like you have a zombie comic book, or you've got like your art is zombie work, or there's like a Dracula, or there's vampires, or any type of like pop culture thing. ride the coattails of something else that's happening around. Like, let's just say, for instance, you're like, I mean, if you're going to pitch something that's like, you know, holiday time-ish, make sure it's around the holiday times. That's obviously an easy one, but like make it really topical. Cause like I have covered a couple of different things, a couple of comic book stores. Who was it? It was just, you know, it was piggybacking off something I can't remember specific, but it was topical with the point of like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, like something. It was like an anniversary of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, so they had that type of comic book, and then that's what we piggybacked off of, and it worked out. So make sure you keep it topical on the point of what's happening today, almost like what's happening right now. So it's like
How would you pitch a local TV station?
Simple. Just write a who, what, where, when. Simple press release. Just make sure you have your contact info. Make sure you have a specific event you want us to cover. You know, that's another thing too. Like, let's just say it's going to be your first time at this. You're pitching this brand new graphic novel, and we're going to be at Unknown Comics on Main Street. You know, so we're going to be there on, you know, July 19th. Be there or be square kind of thing. And if you give us a specific, then you can have kind of work up to like, hey, do you want to cover it? Then you'll wind up getting at least a little bit, maybe a VOSAT, you know, just a simple story later on in the show. But that's huge. That's like, I mean, people love it when we do stuff like that. I work for a station that's hyper local. So just press releases, who, what, where, when, and why, and make sure you've got an event to cover, or you're at an event to cover, and we'll get there and we'll cover it probably, maybe, you know.
Jason,
can I add on to that? With my clients that I represent, we go through the prnewswire.com, and what we've discovered is this sounds counterintuitive, but it's exactly what works. You should not do a PR newswire blast for just that area that your product is going to be at. Like, let's say you're doing a book signing in North Hollywood. You would not want to do a PR newswire blast for Southern California. You would want to do a global PR newswire blast. Because Southern California is more likely to pick you up if they see that they're covering you in Texas, if they're covering you in Wisconsin. That's what we've discovered. Plus, it stays evergreen if you go on the road. So we always do worldwide, no matter if it's local.
Oh, perfect. That works too. Yeah. Oh, anything works. I'm just like hooks. You gotta have the hook is what mostly is.
I'll also relate to what was one of the things that Tim had suggested there, and again in the counterintuitive part. Right now, we all know what the main news story is. Everybody's got some variation of what the main news story is. We're in comics. Go in an entirely different direction. Try and go with, here's what people are doing. Here's something else. Here's this escapist fantasy of people doing, you know, daring to do something else. Something, you know, or maybe here's something that will entertain your children who are stuck at home with you. You know, go counterintuitive to a certain extent. Go, you know, hit the ball where they ain't. And right now, there's a lot of...
I think there's a tremendous opportunity right now because of that, because, you know, we are in lockdown. And, you know, I think one of the reasons that wrestling has, you know, it's the only thing happening right now. There's no sports. And, you know, I mean, it's terrible that wrestling, you know.
Tiger King.
About 2 weeks ago, ESPN actually took it and did something normally they only do this in August, but they took an entire day and they replaced their programming with ESPN 8, the Ocho. For those of you who, you know, for all those guys who saw the movie Dodgeball, where they ran all of the non-sports that they normally run. So, you know, you had marble racing championships, and you had, all of that stuff. They did an entire day's worth of programming on it because what else are you going to do right now?
Fill the void for sure, yeah.
And right now, I'm assuming, you know, that Jason, you're probably dealing with anybody who can give you a decent human interest story and a different human interest story.
Right.
Is absolute gold.
It's different and it's on point and it makes sense. You know, like if someone talks about, you know, if you just want me to cover your grandmother's 100th birthday, but her birthday, and she's just 100 years old, that doesn't make sense. But if it's her actual birthday week, we're going to cover it, you know? So it's just like, oh, my grandmother's done. We get pictures all the time about like, you know, 100-year-old lady's been around forever, but so she's just a great person, you know, but what's specific? Well, it's her birthday this week, you know, just like on point, you know, that's just, that's
what you dance all the better.
I'm
Speaking
very
point
interested in
two,
seeing, like, the evolution of a business card, because people can't hand you a business card right now, especially if we're not going to cons. So, with these press releases and stuff, we now have the ability, or a person now has the ability to represent themselves without the confines of something that's printable. So we can do different art things. So I'm very curious to see, like, how people are going to start expressing themselves when they have more space, more time, more ability to do things.
Well, there are two
Speaking-
people. There are two
Point
people
two.
here right now who have virtual backgrounds of WonderCon behind their heads. There's absolutely no reason why, if you have Photoshop, you can take a few minutes, take an existing background or something else like that, use it as your own background, and create, down to the, and create a little Chiron, Randy Phillips, wine expert, or whatever it may happen to be, just to sit down while you're talking to people. And have versions that, if you're going to sit down and do like a television interview with somebody, have that in your background, and one without your name as well, so that you can sit down and do the introduction and then change it out as need be.
People are starting to put their logo on masks. I mean, that's already happening, and it's pretty awful at first, but is it? I mean,
Shameless self-promotion.
yeah,
Yes.
we're all going to be walking around wearing masks for the next while, and just like we wear shoes and t-shirts, and putting a logo on the mask is probably a pretty evolution.
I'll wear someone's mask. If you want to paint me, I'll be a walking billboard
There you go.
all day.
Well,
Speaking of Glenn's point too,
With the minor drawback that you really shouldn't be walking outside right now, but yes, it's.
Well, I was at the grocery
I think
store
open up
yesterday, and they're selling masks in the parking lot, and you can't get in without one, at least where I live. And so nothing would stop you from putting together a few masks with a little bit of cloth and an iron-on decal you can do yourself and you're at home, and some rubber bands, and just giving them out in the parking lot to get some recognition.
I think it's important in this. I think it's important in this day and age to hold some self-respect and not be shamelessly plugging all of your particular products or publishing houses.
I'm actually gonna go with one bit there. Yeah, if you want to make masks and everything else like that, that's fine. But God damn it, at least have some quality behind it. I mean, you're dealing with people. At this point, particularly with something with a mask, you are literally asking people to put their lives in on how good your billboard is. And if you spend more time making a decent billboard out of it than actually, trying to care about your audience and protecting their lives, yeah.
You're afraid the audience will die before they make the purchase.
Right. It's just even worse. Even worse, the news coverage will come. The guy lying in the parking lot wearing your mask with this thing on his face. There is such a thing as bad publicity, and corpses wearing your logo is probably the definition thereof.
Well, it depends on what industry you're in, I guess.
Yeah, it's a horror comic about the dead coming back to life.
Right.
Well, here's the thing. It's like everyone's talking about is it's one simple thing. It's turning a negative into a positive. I remember it was Michael Kingston was talking about when he was on our booth. He does that Headlock comic. He was on our panel. He talked about how, oh, great. I think it was like my comics weren't ready in time for this convention. I had to drive and get them. So he turned that situation into like a follow-along blog of my road trip to go get my comics to get to the convention. So like what we're doing right now. Yeah. And I think, sorry, I forgot your name with the newscasting was, is that, everyone right now is looking for something positive, looking for feel-good stories. And if you can get that story out of like, hey, this is, local boy, local girl, whoever makes good, I'm making a comic and it's getting distributed across the country, and something like that. And of course also like expanding business cards. Social media has become the business card. People are to see what kind of person you are, to see, they'll be looking at your Instagram or your Twitter and seeing like, a lot of them are turning stuff into like everyday life. Hey, what are you guys doing? I'm doing this. You guys, catching up on Animal Crossing or something like that. And a lot of people will see, oh, this guy plays Animal Crossing, or he reads this thing, or is into these movies. I'm going to go follow this guy and support his comic or support his whatever project.
Michael Kingston's a great example too of what Glenn was talking earlier about hitting the ball where they ain't. Finding communities, a lot of people who are especially self-publishing a comic think that they're driving directly towards the comics community. And of course, that's a community you want to drive to. But Michael Kingston's comic Headlocked is about pro wrestling. So what did he do? He went to the wrestling audience. He started going to independent pro wrestling shows. He started going to, which, you know, we're talking about how to get news coverage. It's important to note that news coverage now isn't just TV, newspaper. It's also podcasts. It's also YouTube pages. So his comics about wrestling, sure, he's going to the wrestling audience with it, but he's also going to wrestling podcasts. He's also going to wrestling YouTubers. You mentioned Josh Henneman earlier with the Bigfoot comic. I forget what the name of his publishing company is, but it's something to do with, Brewhouse. So he started going to like craft brew communities online, message boards, meetup groups, things like that. I forget who did a NASCAR comic a couple years ago. I want to say it was Dave Blanche from Action Lab. But it's like, well, who in the comics community wants to read a comic about NASCAR? Maybe not a lot of people, but you know who will read it? NASCAR fans.
NASCAR fans.
When I was at Archie, they did a story where Betty became a NASCAR driver.
Yeah.
And they
Betty
said to me,
She-
they didn't call it NASCAR, but that was the gist of it because they liked the Danica Patrick story at the time. And so they said to me, we want this listed in NASCAR magazines. We want the NASCAR audience to know what's out there. And I didn't have any contacts in NASCAR, so I basically tried to make them, and we were covered in NASCAR Illustrated. So you always want to look for that niche audience, people who will read it. I mean, even though your average NASCAR fan may not be a Betty and Veronica fan, your children and grandchildren are.
But we had
you can make that connection, you can sell it.
At one of the conventions one year, whose comic book featured a main character that had autism, and he was asking us, how do I get this book out? Like, are you kidding? Go to the autism groups, go to YouTube pages of websites that are covering, you know, there's so many people who don't even realize that comic books are still made. And for those, especially niche communities who are looking for some representation, to find out that there's a comic book with a main protagonist that has autism, huge for them. A whole entire market that's like, that had opened up, that if you're not thinking outside the box of just the comics community, right, you might not even consider, and you'd miss out on.
Well,
and the story we would tell them, it would be a National Autism Day for that
right.
autistic, you know? Like if it was National Autistic Day and you pitch that story to your local station and you have an autistic protagonist in your comic book, that in conjunction will get probably coverage and cover all your bases. Go all 5 stations, local stations that are in your area. Whatever.
I'll also throw in that, you know, hell, use your platform to promote something other than yourself.
Yeah.
Which goes a very long way. Goes a very long way right now to just sit down and say, hey, I'm pushing whatever this may happen to be. And it's not just about me. I think this is fun. This is worthwhile to go out and just, you know, and just share a story about whatever it may happen to be. And also one other bit, look at the story, whatever story it is that you're trying to tell. And this is unfortunately, this is a specific case here. There are some stories that just are not going to sell the same way in current conditions that you might otherwise have. I spent the first month of whatever this is going through the various proposals for books that had come in, and half of them were no longer viable in this day and age. You know, here's a superhero team that comes back, you know, 20 years later after, you know, being gone for 20 years. And well, here's how they're spending their time. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, that story doesn't work the same way anymore. So, you know, same thing with vampire stories, same thing with any, you know, any near future science fiction, all that other stuff is suddenly like, does this story, you know, is it worth telling this story again now in this format? So.
All right, we've got just about a minute left. So why doesn't everyone just tell people where they can find you and what you're working on real quick, and then we'll wrap this up for the WonderCon audience at home. Okay, Jason,
we're going to do this in. Normally just go down the line, but we can't tell who's in the order in the Brady Box bunch here.
All right, so why don't you start, Glenn?
Hi, Glenn Hauman. You can go see us at ComicMix.com. You can find, we're still shipping books, amazingly. This book, I don't know if it has quite the same feel nowadays, or, you know, like, you know, if you're worried about loved ones dying, don't buy that. Go buy this book, I Die Instead, over and over and over again. It's much funnier. theoretically.
All right, Jason, you got anything?
Jason LiVecchi with KUSI News. I'll end there. But also, I want to thank everybody for listening. I really enjoyed listening to everybody. And pitch your idea. That's one thing I wanted to make sure. Pitch your ideas topical. If you're going to pitch a vampire book, do it on Bram Stoker's birthday. You know what I mean? Like, pitch it then. So that's the point I just wanted to really drive home, that from my angle of it. But again, thank you. It was really fun listening and talking to everybody.
Thank you. Tim?
Hey, the reason I popped when he was talking about, helping each other is I was writing it down as something I wanted to point out. A lot of the work I'm getting right now is referrals from my peers. So every action gets an equal and opposite reaction. So make sure you promote your friends and, recommend them for work because they do the same for you. Also, my book Soul Trader is out. It's great. It's got quotes and blurbs. It's amazing. Yay. Thanks, everybody.
All right, Francis.
Yes, Francis Guy, First Comics News. Check me out on that site on firstcomicsnews.com with articles, and also be working on, hopefully during this quarantine or during this time where Comic-Con is the gap, working on my comic, The Massacre Twins, along with Josh Waldrop.
Josh, that leads to you.
Howdy. So Joshua Waldrop, you can find me at facebook.com/SoCalFranchise. That's SoCalFranchize. Also on Instagram at SoCalFranchise, ZE at the end. And keep an eye out for the massacretwins.com. We've got a new artist that's going to be starting up with us soon, and new things coming out. So we're hopefully, when we are able to all come back together and see each other at cons and stuff, we'll have some nifty things in hand. And also look out for Red Gorilla, REDGUERRILLA. That's my production, small boutique stand-up comedy shows, independent comics, things of that nature. A lot of things coming soon.
Okay, Heidi?
So you can find The Beat, comicsbeat.com, on all social media as Comics Beat. You can find me personally on all social media as Comics Ace with an X, COMIXACE. And, we are plugging along on The Beat. We are covering what's happening in the world of comics, which is quite a bit. And, and on a positive note, comics are not going anywhere. I mean, they might go some other place, but they will be there. And, you will still, even in all of this, there will be a way to get your comics out to people, and they will be able to read them in some way, shape, or form.
All right, Jez?
I'm Jez Ibelle. Firstcomicsnews.com is where you can find my articles. And I'm just kind of spending the next couple of weeks working on my Japanese. So I would like to start branching out into doing some networking with outside of the United States, and maybe work getting cons together as far as like bringing other artists over from other parts of the world. So that's pretty much what I'm working on. And
Mushi
thank
mushi.
you.
Mushy, mushy.
Como.
Okay, and I'm Rik Offenberger. You can find me at firstcomicsnews.com. And we're also doing a little bit of publishing at G-Man Comics. It's a hyphen between the G and the man, and a hyphen between the man and the comics, if you're looking for it. Very small press fanzines. But I appreciate all of you joining us for this first ever Comic-Con at home, or WonderCon at home. And I hope you had a good time with our panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next year in
everyone.
Anaheim, folks.
Yeah.
You all.
Take care, everybody.